Ethan Graves was a man who had everything. He was the kind of billionaire that everyone knew about, not just for his wealth, but for his sharp mind and fearless attitude. He never hesitated to take on any challenge or bet that came his way. In his world, money solved everything, and he enjoyed the thrill of proving that he could win at anything. To him, life was a game, and he always played to win. One evening, at an exclusive charity event, Ethan overheard a conversation that sparked his interest. It was about a woman named Maya, a young woman in her late 20s who had been battling cancer for years. She was known for her strength, her ability to inspire others, and her calm, peaceful demeanor, even in the face of her illness. What struck Ethan the most wasn't just her story, but how everyone around her spoke of her with a sense of reverence. She was beautiful, graceful, and had a spirit that could brighten any room. Yet, she was dying. As he listened to the conversation, an idea began to form in Ethan's mind. An idea that wasn't driven by sympathy, but by something else: pride. He turned to one of his business partners, Lucas, who had been talking about Maya, and casually made a bold comment. "I bet I could marry her before the week is over," Ethan said with a smirk, his voice full of confidence. Lucas looked at him, slightly amused. "You're serious? She's dying, Ethan. It's not about that for her." "I don't care," Ethan replied, shrugging. "I'll do it just to prove I can." Lucas raised an eyebrow, but the wheels were already turning in Ethan's mind. This was just another challenge for him to conquer, and he couldn't resist. The bet was on. Ethan didn't see Maya as a person who needed love or compassion. He saw her as a conquest, just like any other challenge he had taken on in the past. To him, winning this bet would be no different than closing a deal worth millions. It would be another victory to add to his endless list of accomplishments. But what Ethan didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known, was that Maya wasn't just any woman. She wasn't someone who could be won over with grand gestures or a flashy display of wealth. She had lived through enough to know the difference between genuine care and empty words. She had seen many people come and go, but very few had truly understood her. Ethan, with his arrogance and detached attitude, would be no different in her eyes, at least at first. Ethan immediately set his plans in motion. He would meet her, charm her with his wealth and charisma, and marry her quickly, just as he promised. He thought it would be an easy task, a way to show his friends that he could do anything. However, as the days went on, and he learned more about Maya, Ethan started to feel something he wasn't used to doubt. Could he truly win over a woman like her, someone who had nothing to prove to anyone? Still, he was determined to see it through. After all, it was just a bet, wasn't it? Little did he know, his life was about to change in a way he never expected. Maya had always been different from others. Despite facing a battle with cancer that many would find overwhelming, she chose to live her life with strength and dignity. She wasn't one to wallow in self-pity, and she didn't let her illness define her. Instead, she focused on the things that mattered most to her: helping others, making a difference in the world, and living each day to its fullest. Maya knew her time was limited, but she refused to let cancer rob her of her happiness or the chance to make her life count. She spent her days volunteering at a local community center, offering support to those going through their own struggles. It was there that she found comfort. Helping others gave her a sense of purpose. Maya wasn't interested in fame or attention. She didn't care for the material things in life, like expensive clothes or flashy cars. What mattered to her was the impact she could have on people's lives and how she could make others feel seen and heard. Her illness had been a part of her life for years. It had taken its toll, slowly weakening her body, but her spirit remained unshakable. Maya had learned to live with the uncertainty, accepting each day as a gift, not something to be taken for granted. She had always been strong-willed, never allowing her situation to affect her ability to enjoy life. She loved simple pleasures like reading, listening to music, or watching the sunset from her window. She had learned that sometimes the most beautiful moments came from the smallest things. When Ethan first entered her life, she didn't think much of him. She had heard rumors about him, of course, the wealthy businessman who lived a life most people could only dream of. His name was known in high circles, and his success was undeniable. But Maya had never been impressed by wealth. She had met enough wealthy people in her life to know that money didn't guarantee happiness, and it certainly didn't bring about real connections. When Ethan approached her, offering his proposition, Maya wasn't surprised. She had seen it all before. The rich men who thought their wealth could buy anything they wanted, including love. She didn't have time for games, and she wasn't interested in becoming another trophy for someone's ego. Still, she agreed to meet with him, but only out of curiosity. After all, it wasn't every day that a billionaire made such an offer. Maya was not one to shy away from a challenge, but she also wasn't looking for romance. Love had never been a priority for her. She had learned long ago that her worth wasn't determined by someone else's affection. In fact, she had come to a place of peace where she no longer sought validation from others. Her life was her own, and she was content with it, even as she faced the reality of her illness. Despite her doubts about Ethan's intentions, there was something intriguing about him. He seemed different from the others who tried to impress her. He was confident, yes, but there was a certain coldness to him that she found interesting. It wasn't arrogance, but something deeper, perhaps a fear of vulnerability, or a lack of understanding about what really mattered in life. Maya couldn't help but wonder how someone like him could have so much and still seem so lost. As she prepared to meet him, she reminded herself not to expect much. She had no intention of falling for his charm or his wealth. But even as she told herself to be cautious, a small part of her wondered, could this man teach her something she didn't already know? Or would he just be another person who didn't see her for who she truly was? Only time would tell. When Ethan finally met Maya, he was surprised by how different she was from what he had expected. He had imagined a woman who might be drawn to his wealth, someone who would be impressed by his fancy suits and expensive watch. But when he walked into the small, modest cafe where they agreed to meet, he immediately felt out of place. Maya was sitting at a corner table, dressed in simple clothes, her smile warm but calm, and there was no sparkle of awe in her eyes as he took the seat across from her. She looked at him curiously, but without any signs of being overly impressed. "You're Ethan Graves, right?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. "That's me," he replied, trying to hide his surprise at how little she seemed to care. He had expected more of a reaction, something to show him that his reputation had preceded him. But Maya was different. She didn't care about his name or status. She was just another person who had her own life, her own story. "Why did you want to meet?" Maya asked, folding her hands in front of her as if she were preparing for a business discussion. She wasn't rude, but she was direct. Ethan found this refreshing, even though it made him feel somewhat out of his element. "Well," he started, trying to keep his tone casual, "I've heard a lot about you, and I think I can help you. I want to offer something you might need, time, comfort, or whatever it is that you're lacking." He wasn't exactly sure how to phrase it, but he didn't want to sound too blunt or presumptuous. Maya raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying into the smooth words he was used to delivering. "And you think that I need your help?" Ethan paused. He wasn't used to being questioned like this. He had always been the one in control of the conversation. But here, with Maya, it felt like the tables had turned. He thought about his offer carefully. He had come to her with the idea of marrying her on a bet, but there was something about the way she looked at him that made him reconsider. I guess I'm just offering a gesture," he said, "something that might make your situation a little easier. I could make your last days comfortable, give you whatever you need. Money, travel, whatever you want." Maya listened quietly, nodding as he spoke, but instead of reacting the way Ethan expected, she simply said, "I don't need anything from you, Ethan. I'm not looking for pity or charity." Her voice was calm, but filled with a quiet strength. "What I need is to live the life I have left with dignity and purpose." Ethan was taken aback by her response. He wasn't used to hearing such honesty, especially from someone in her situation. Most people, he thought, would be thrilled by the offer of wealth and luxury. But Maya wasn't like the others. She wasn't looking for a handout. She wasn't interested in being saved by his money or his status. There was a silence between them, a moment where Ethan didn't know what to say. For the first time, he felt unsure of himself. This woman, with so little left to live for, had a sense of independence that left him in awe. Maya finally broke the silence. "I'm not asking for anything, Ethan. I don't need anything from you. But I appreciate that you're offering. I just want to make the most of what I have. I've learned that the most valuable things in life aren't the things money can buy." Ethan sat there for a moment, staring at her. Something inside him shifted. He had come to her with the intent of winning a bet, but now he wasn't so sure anymore. There was no game to win here. Maya wasn't a prize to be claimed, and she wasn't someone he could impress with his wealth. She was someone who had everything that truly mattered in life: grace, humility, and a heart full of strength. "Well," Ethan said finally, his voice softer than before, "I can't promise to give you everything, but if you ever need anything, someone to talk to, I'm here." Maya smiled gently, and for the first time, Ethan realized that he wasn't speaking to her from a place of superiority, but as a man who was starting to understand something deeper about life. "I'll keep that in mind," Maya said quietly, her eyes meeting his in a way that made him feel like she saw right through him. And for the first time, Ethan wasn't sure if he could win this bet. He wasn't even sure if he wanted to anymore. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Maya after their meeting. It wasn't like him to be caught off guard, to feel uncertain, but something about her stayed with him. His initial plan to charm her with his wealth seemed so far away now. He had expected her to be a pawn in his game, but she wasn't interested in playing by his rules. She was strong, confident, and independent, qualities Ethan hadn't anticipated in the least. Despite himself, he couldn't shake the feeling that Maya was more than just a challenge. There was a quiet wisdom in the way she spoke, a depth that made him question everything he thought he knew about life. It made him uneasy in a way he wasn't used to. The next few days were a blur for Ethan. He still wanted to follow through with his bet, but his mind kept drifting back to Maya. He found himself thinking about her not as a prize to be won, but as a person, someone who had lived through more than he could imagine, and who had a strength that made him look at his own life differently. Finally, he decided to visit her again, but this time, it wasn't about the bet. He just wanted to spend time with her, to understand her more. When he arrived at her small apartment, he was surprised at how different it felt from the world he was used to. There were no luxury cars or expensive decorations, just simple, cozy furniture and pictures of family and friends. The space was filled with warmth, a reflection of who Maya was. She greeted him with a smile, as if their previous conversation had never happened. There was no pretense, no game playing. She welcomed him as if he were just another person, and for some reason that made Ethan feel at ease. "Come on in," she said, leading him to a small dining table where she had already set up tea and some homemade pastries. "I thought you might like to relax a bit. You've been working hard, I imagine." Ethan sat down, feeling a little out of place. He was used to high-end restaurants and five-star service, not sitting at a humble table in someone's home. But something about this felt real, more genuine than any luxury he had ever experienced. They talked for hours that afternoon. Maya shared stories of her childhood, of growing up in a tight-knit community, and how her illness had changed her perspective on life. Ethan listened, genuinely interested, and found himself laughing at her anecdotes, marveling at her ability to find humor even in difficult situations. The more they talked, the more Ethan realized how much he had taken for granted in his own life. He had always focused on building his empire, accumulating wealth, and striving for more. But Maya, despite everything she was going through, had learned to appreciate the small moments, the moments that mattered most. Ethan found himself asking questions he never thought he'd ask. What was truly important? What did it mean to live a fulfilling life? He wasn't sure why these questions were coming up now, but there was something about Maya that made him want to rethink his own priorities. As the evening went on, Ethan felt a sense of peace that he hadn't known in a long time. Maya's presence had a calming effect on him, and for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about his next business deal or how to climb higher on the social ladder. He was simply enjoying the moment, enjoying her company. Before he left, Maya looked at him with those wise, gentle eyes and said, "You know, you don't have to do anything for me. Just being here, listening, that's more than enough." Ethan was speechless. He had come to her expecting to win a bet, to offer something she could use, but instead, she had given him a gift, the gift of understanding, of seeing life through a different lens. As he walked back to his car, he couldn't help but feel that something had changed inside him. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. Maya had already taught him something that no amount of money or success ever could, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan didn't feel so certain about his own plans. Perhaps for once, he needed to let life unfold without trying to control every step. As the days passed, Ethan found himself thinking more and more about Maya. The weight of his original plan, the bet, seemed to fade away, replaced by something he hadn't expected: genuine curiosity. Maya wasn't someone who needed saving, and she certainly didn't want his money. She didn't care about his wealth or status, and that was something Ethan wasn't used to. He had always been admired for those very things, and yet with Maya, they didn't matter at all. Ethan began to spend more time with her. At first, it felt like he was just visiting to check off the box of fulfilling his bet, but gradually, the visits took on a different feel. Maya wasn't just a woman to be admired from a distance. She was a person with a depth of character that fascinated him. He wanted to learn more about her, about what made her so strong and so at peace with herself despite everything she was going through. He started accompanying her to the community center where she volunteered, something she had invited him to do. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he quickly realized it was a world far removed from the high-powered meetings and lavish events he was used to. The people at the center were kind, welcoming, and full of gratitude. They weren't focused on money or status. They were just trying to make the best of their circumstances, much like Maya had been doing for years. As Ethan observed the work Maya did, he began to see her in a new light. She didn't just talk about helping people, she was actively doing it. She spent hours organizing events, comforting those who needed it, and simply offering a listening ear to anyone who came to the center. Maya's kindness was not limited to words. It was reflected in her actions every single day. Ethan could hardly believe how someone who was facing such a tough battle could still give so much to others. One afternoon, as they sat together in a quiet corner of the center, Maya spoke about the things that truly mattered to her. "I've learned that the most valuable thing we have is time," she said softly, her eyes thoughtful. "It's not the money, or the things we own, or the achievements we rack up. It's the moments we get to share with others. The kindness we give, the love we share, that's what lasts." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat as he listened. Here was this woman, who had so little time left, teaching him something that most people in his world would never understand. He had spent his entire life chasing success, building his empire, and acquiring wealth. But in that moment, he realized that none of it mattered. None of it could ever bring him the kind of fulfillment that Maya found in the simplest acts of kindness. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan found himself growing closer to Maya. He was no longer visiting her out of a sense of obligation, or because of the bet. He was visiting her because he genuinely cared. He enjoyed their conversations, their time spent together, and the peaceful way she approached life. There was something calming about her presence, something that made him want to be a better person. Maya, too, seemed to notice the change in him. She had always been wary of Ethan's intentions, but now she saw that he was different. He wasn't the same man who had come to her with a bet in mind. He had softened, his edges becoming less sharp. Maya could see that he was starting to understand the value of what really mattered in life. It was as if he had started to see beyond the surface, beyond the wealth and the accomplishments, and was beginning to appreciate the things that Maya had known all along. One evening, as they sat on her balcony watching the sunset, Ethan turned to her and said, "You've changed my life, Maya. I don't know if you realize it, but you've made me see everything differently." Maya smiled, her eyes warm but still holding a quiet sadness. "I didn't change you, Ethan. You already had that inside you. You just needed to open your eyes to it." Her words stayed with him long after that evening, and for the first time, Ethan felt truly grateful. Grateful for the lessons Maya had taught him, for the time they had shared, and for the quiet, powerful way she had transformed his perspective on life. The man who had come to her with a bet was no longer the same person. Maya had helped him find a better version of himself, one that didn't chase after money or success, but one that valued connection, love, and kindness above all else. Ethan knew he had a long way to go, but he was determined to keep learning, to keep growing. And most importantly, he wanted to spend as much time as he could with Maya, to learn from her, and to be the kind of person she saw in him. Someone worthy of her friendship and her trust. As the weeks passed, Maya's health began to decline. Despite her unshakable strength, the toll of her illness was becoming more and more evident. She was tired often, her body growing weaker as the days went on. Yet even in these moments, she remained as graceful as ever. Ethan noticed the change in her, but he refused to let it drive him away. In fact, it only made him want to be there more, to support her in any way he could. It was during these visits that Ethan began to truly appreciate how much Maya had taught him. He had witnessed her strength and her ability to face each day with a quiet determination, but now he was beginning to understand the importance of her message. Time. It wasn't just about living. It was about how you chose to spend that time. Maya had shown him that life wasn't something to be controlled. It was something to be experienced, to be cherished in its raw, unfiltered moments. Ethan spent his days with her, finding small ways to bring her joy. He would bring her favorite books, or a warm cup of tea, or simply sit with her in silence when words weren't needed. Maya never asked for anything, but Ethan could see that the presence of someone who truly cared meant the world to her. They would watch the sunset together from her balcony, just as they had before, but now there was a sense of urgency in the way they held on to those moments. They were fleeting, and they both knew it. One afternoon, as they sat side by side, Maya turned to Ethan with a soft smile. "You've been so kind to me," she said quietly. "I'm not sure I've ever met anyone who has understood me the way you do. You've been a good friend, Ethan." Ethan's heart tightened as he listened. It was as if, with those few words, Maya was acknowledging something deeper than their friendship. She was acknowledging the change that had taken place in him, a transformation he never thought possible. "I don't know how I can repay you for all that you've given me," Ethan said, his voice filled with sincerity. "You've taught me so much about life, about what really matters." Maya's eyes softened, and she reached out to gently squeeze his hand. "You don't need to repay me. You've already given me something I never expected, the gift of your friendship. That's all I need." Ethan nodded, his throat tight. He had never been good at expressing his emotions, especially when it came to matters of the heart. But with Maya, it felt different. He wasn't just offering her something out of obligation or guilt. He was offering her a part of himself, a part he had never shared with anyone before. As the days continued, Ethan found himself opening up more to Maya. They talked about their dreams, their fears, and their regrets. Maya spoke of her childhood, of the things she had always wanted to do, and how she had learned to let go of expectations. Ethan, for the first time in his life, shared his vulnerabilities with someone else, someone who didn't judge him or see him for his wealth, but for who he truly was inside. It wasn't long before Ethan realized that he had fallen in love with Maya. It wasn't something he had planned for or expected, but it had happened slowly, quietly, and without him even realizing it. It was the kind of love that didn't need grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It was simple, real, and pure. It was a love that stemmed from admiration, respect, and the understanding of what it meant to truly care for someone. But as much as he loved her, Ethan knew that time was not on their side. Maya's condition was worsening, and though she remained strong, he could see the toll it was taking on her. He didn't know how much longer they had together, but he was determined to make the most of every moment. One evening, as they sat on her balcony watching the stars, Ethan turned to her, his voice barely above a whisper. "I wish I could do more for you," he said, the words heavy with emotion. "I wish I could take away your pain." Maya smiled, her eyes soft and accepting. "You already have, Ethan. Just by being here, by showing me that life is still worth living, even in the hardest moments. That's enough." Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes as he held her hand. He didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, he was more grateful than he had ever been in his entire life. Maya had taught him the true meaning of living, and he would carry that lesson with him forever. As the night grew quiet and the stars twinkled above them, Ethan realized that the bet he had made all those weeks ago no longer mattered. What mattered now was the love he had found in the most unexpected of places, and the incredible woman who had changed his life forever. As the days turned into weeks, Maya's condition continued to worsen. The once bright spark in her eyes now seemed to flicker a little less with each passing day. Ethan, however, refused to leave her side. He had come to care for her in a way he hadn't thought possible, and he was determined to make her final days as comfortable and peaceful as he could. Maya had always been open with Ethan about the way she saw the world, about her journey, her dreams, and how she had come to terms with the limited time she had left. Now, though, it seemed she had accepted her fate even more fully. She didn't fear death, at least not the way most people did. She spoke of it quietly, almost with a sense of peace, as though it were just another chapter of life. One evening, as Ethan sat beside her on the couch in her small living room, Maya turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "I've lived a good life, Ethan," she said, her voice soft. "Maybe it wasn't as long as I wanted, but it was filled with moments that mattered. And that's what matters, isn't it? Not the length of time, but how you fill it." Ethan listened to her words, feeling a lump form in his throat. He had spent his own life chasing success, gathering achievements, and building his wealth. But here she was, someone who had far less time than him, yet she had learned the one thing he had been missing all along. "I wish I had learned this earlier," Ethan said quietly. "I wish I had understood that what really matters isn't all the things I've done, but the connections I've made along the way. The people who care for me and the ones I care for. I've learned it from you." Maya smiled, her eyes soft and understanding. "It's never too late to learn, Ethan. And you're learning now. That's what matters. You're growing into the person you were always meant to be." Ethan felt a deep sense of gratitude for her words. He had never expected that a woman who was facing the end of her life would teach him so much about how to live. It wasn't just the big lessons, it was the small moments they shared together that made the biggest impact. The way she spoke about love, kindness, and how every day was a gift. Those were the lessons that stayed with him. As Maya's condition continued to decline, Ethan found himself spending more and more time with her. They would sit together in silence, sometimes talking, sometimes simply enjoying each other's company. Even in her weakened state, Maya still had the ability to make him feel at peace. There was no need for grand gestures or dramatic displays. Just being in her presence was enough. One afternoon, as Ethan held her hand, Maya looked up at him with a gentle smile. "You've been a good friend, Ethan," she said. "I know I haven't said it enough, but I want you to know that I'm thankful for you. I never expected this kind of bond, especially not from someone like you, but I'm grateful for it." Ethan's heart ached as he heard her words. "I'm the lucky one, Maya. You've shown me what it means to truly live, to find meaning in every moment. I'll never forget what you've taught me." Maya's eyes shone with a quiet light. "You're going to be okay, Ethan. You have so much to offer the world. Don't forget that." Her words, though soft and barely audible, were powerful. They were the final lesson she would give him, the lesson of living fully, without regrets, and finding meaning in the simple things. And though he couldn't imagine a world without her in it, he knew that she had given him everything he needed to carry on. As the days passed, Maya's health continued to deteriorate. Yet she never lost her calm demeanor, never stopped showing Ethan the beauty of life. Even in her final moments, she was teaching him about love, kindness, and the strength it took to face the inevitable with grace. One evening, as the sun began to set, Maya took Ethan's hand and smiled. "I'm ready, Ethan," she said softly. "I've had my time. Now, I'm at peace." Ethan felt his heart break, but at the same time, he was filled with an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Maya had taught him to live, not just to exist. And though her time had come to an end, the lessons she had shared with him would live on in his heart forever. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared, Maya closed her eyes, her breathing slowing. Ethan sat there, holding her hand, silently promising to honor the wisdom she had shared with him. He had come into her life thinking it would be a simple bet, but he had walked away with something far more valuable, a deeper understanding of what it truly meant to live. After Maya passed away, the world felt different to Ethan. The life he had once known, filled with meetings, deals, and the pursuit of wealth, seemed distant now. Maya's death left a hole in his heart, but it also left behind something precious, a newfound perspective on life that he couldn't shake. He missed her every day, but instead of feeling sorrowful or angry, Ethan found himself reflecting on everything she had taught him. The way she had lived with so much grace and strength, the way she had given her time and energy to others, was something he wanted to honor. In the weeks following her passing, Ethan began to make small changes in his life. He was no longer focused solely on business or material success. The lessons he had learned from Maya, about kindness, time, and genuine human connection, became the guiding principles of his life. He started volunteering at the community center where Maya had spent so much of her time. It wasn't just about honoring her memory. It was about continuing the work she had started, about giving back in the way she had taught him to. Ethan found himself surrounded by people who didn't care about his wealth or status. They cared about the work they were doing to improve their community, about helping one another, and about making a difference in each other's lives. He spent his days organizing events, helping people find resources, and simply being present. It was a different kind of fulfillment, one that didn't come from a paycheck or recognition, but from the joy of knowing he was contributing to something meaningful. One day, as he was leaving the center after a long day of work, he ran into a young woman who had just started volunteering. Her name was Sarah, and she had a bright, kind smile that reminded him of Maya. They started talking, and Ethan couldn't help but notice how passionate Sarah was about the work they were doing. She spoke about helping others, about creating a better future for people who were struggling, and about making every day count. It was as if he was hearing echoes of Maya's words. Over time, Ethan and Sarah grew closer, not just as colleagues but as friends. Sarah had a gentle, positive energy about her that reminded Ethan of everything he had learned from Maya. She was determined, kind, and full of life, someone who believed in the power of small acts of kindness. They would spend hours talking about their hopes for the future, about the world they wanted to build, and about the importance of using their time wisely. As their friendship deepened, Ethan realized that Maya's lessons had prepared him for this moment. He wasn't ready to replace her. He knew no one could ever take her place in his heart. But he had learned that life was about building connections, about offering love and support to others, and about living with purpose. He had never imagined that after losing Maya, he would find another person who could inspire him in the same way. But Sarah's passion for helping others, her love for life, and her determination to make a difference in the world reminded him of the best parts of Maya's spirit. Ethan had come a long way since that first meeting with Maya, when he had been driven by a bet. The man he was now was someone who valued life, loved deeply, and believed in the power of making each day count. He had found peace, not in wealth or success, but in the connections he made with people and in the ways he could help make the world a better place. In the end, Ethan understood that Maya had given him the greatest gift of all. Not wealth, not status, but a deeper understanding of what it meant to live with purpose and love. And though Maya was no longer physically with him, her memory, her wisdom, and her spirit lived on in every act of kindness, in every smile, and in every person whose life he touched. Ethan would carry her lessons with him for the rest of his life, and he would continue to honor her by living the life she had shown him was truly worth living.